Alright guys, so the last video that we did, we went ahead and we stained this base for our Tulip, and it's been overnight, so it's good and dry at this point here. And now what we want to do is we want to add a coat of polyurethane. And the purpose of the polyurethane is it does offer a little bit of protection. Polyurethane, I guess by the simple man's definition, would be a liquid plastic. And when we put it on, it goes on in a liquid form, and then it will harden to a nice solid type of a barrier. So it does offer some protection for our project, but in addition to that, it also adds some shine. So let's go over a few types of polyurethane that's available and what we'll be using today. So for this particular project, we're going to be using some oil-based polyurethane. And this particular one right here happens to be a clear satin. They offer 3 sheens, or 3 levels of shine. There's a clear satin, there's a clear semi-gloss, and there's a clear gloss. Let's go over what that means. A satin, best described, would be a dull shine. A gloss would be a very bright shine, and a semi-gloss would be somewhere in between. Generally speaking, I like to focus on using either a satin or a semi-gloss, especially if we're a entry-level student and it's our first time kind of using this. Reason being is because the more clear, the more shiny a polyurethane is, the more it's going to enhance your pros and your cons. So yes, the good parts of your project are going to look fantastic, but the not so good parts of your project are also going to show up, your flaws. So they'll be enhanced. So I like to say, hey, let's use a satin or a semi-gloss, when we start off, and once we get into maybe our level 3s or our level 4s, and maybe we want to make a real nice tabletop, and we take a lot of time and we make sure that it's 0 imperfections, then we could maybe go for a nice high gloss and really get a nice shine on that. So let me go over how I kind of make this polyurethane. So this right here is what they would call a brush-on type polyurethane. And when brushing this stuff on, it's very challenging, especially for the entry-level person. You can usually brush on 2 coats, 1 coat today, maybe wait 4 to 6 hours, put another one on. In here, we just put a coat on, the next day we put another coat on. We're not gonna brush this stuff on. The reason being is kids like instant results. And what I mean by that is you wanna put that polyurethane on and you want it to be super shiny, just like that. And it doesn't quite work like that. It takes time to build up that shine. So what I do is I make this into a wipe-on polyurethane. And you could go and you can buy wipe-on polyurethane just the same. But we'd rather just make it because we can extend our budget by making it our own way. And here's how I make it. We have these little squirt bottles right here. Usually I just use an old glue bottle. I take the labels off of it and we write wipe-on poly on it. And when that glue bottle finally wears out with the polyurethane in it, we throw it out. These aren't much, they're a couple of cents a piece. I think they might be 40, 50 cents. Same thing, we'll get a couple rounds out of that and we throw that out and we'll get another one. But what I do is I mix it 50-50 polyurethane to a paint thinner or a mineral spirits or a lacquer thinner. Any of those 3 would work pretty well. And here's what happens. This is kind of thick, not crazy thick. I don't want to say it's thick like honey, all right, but it would probably be somewhere between the viscosity of a water and a honey. Maybe more like a motor oil if you've ever changed the oil in your car or your lawnmower or your dirt bike. Maybe you know what I'm kind of getting at. And it doesn't quite lay right. When you put it on, you get brush strokes and drips and runs. And we're going to do a wipe-on polyurethane. So we mix it 50% this, and 50% of the paint thinner or mineral spirits or lacquer thinner. So what I did was I filled this up halfway with one, halfway with the other. Obviously, definitely made sure I wore my safety glasses, and I also had a pair of gloves on just to lower our exposure level to this. Now we got our little wood base right here, and what I like to do on any of our polyurethane projects is we always start with the underside or the back side or the bad side, the side that we're not going to see. This is going to be on the ground, we're never going to see that. If it was on the wall, we'd never see it. We start polying on this side so that we can set it like that. That way if we have any imperfections, by laying down, or if it picks up anything, it'll be on the bottom and it's not the end of the world because we're never going to see it. Now, especially in this room here, it's very important that we go light with the polyurethane because on a normal day we're running 120 kids through here. So there's a lot of sawdust, and what happens is as the polyurethane is drying, that sawdust lays on here, excuse me, and when it dries the sawdust gets stuck in there. It kind of feels like sandpaper. And we're going to address that in the second half of this video. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to put some polyurethane on this bad boy here today. We're going to talk to you a little bit about it, and we'll be in great shape. So the first thing I'm going to do is put on a pair of gloves, if I can get them to open up. And we've already got our polyurethane over here. I'm just going to use a small cutoff rag, could be a t-shirt, old sock, rag. I'll put this over the top. And they don't really like you to shake polyurethane because it can add bubbles into it. They recommend twirling it. I kind of tell you just go nice and easy. Excuse me. We're going to turn this over and we're just going to put a little bit on here. Now the rag has not been used yet, so it's not saturated at all. Once the rag starts to get a little bit saturated, then we don't really need too much. Now, if we take notice, I want to go with the grain. In the beginning I might have put it on, but I ended going with the grain. That right there is perfect. Doesn't really have a lot of shine to it right now. That's no big deal. We'll get to that later. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to put a little bit on this here, and we're going to run it right over our side. Notice how I put my bottom down, because if we have any issues, we want them to be on our bottom. I kind of explained putting polyurethane on the project as putting money in the bank. Just takes a little bit of time, put a little bit on, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit in the bank, and over time it starts to add up. With the polyurethane, the shine starts to build up. We don't want to go for instant results. Everybody wants instant results. That's why people play the lottery, hoping to win it big. A more fail-safe measure of making money or gaining wealth would be just going to work every day and putting the time in, collecting that paycheck, putting it in the bank. Instant results. You'll hear me say that a lot over the years here. So I just went over the entire top right here. I'm going to go over my sides. I'm going to go over my top once more. I'll tell you what, I'm really liking that. Now the polyurethane, we can see it's a very dull shine that we put on it. We've only put on one coat, and I'm fine with that. I'm going to take a look at this. I'm going to make sure that I got every single side. I'm going to make sure that I have no runs. Go over the bottom a smidge here. That looks beautiful. And remember, we always want to end with our good side facing up. That's perfect right there. We couldn't ask really for anything better. That turned out fantastic. Adding more polyurethane to it right now is not going to do us any good. It's actually going to harm us. And we don't really want to cause ourselves any more harm on the project. What we don't want to do is find out that we have a big old run laying down the side or on the bottom or on the top, and then have to come in tomorrow and hear me say, hey, listen, you got to sand that out. We can't have a big run like that in the project. You'd just be wasting time. You'd have to take a couple steps back. So we don't want you guys to do that. What we do want you to do is go super light with the poly, all right? Wipe it on. Less is more. In other words, don't go for that instant result. Don't go for that instant shine, and just put it on, let the poly do its work. This here in 4 hours, if we were here, we could do another coat. When we cut into this video next time, we'll wind up showing you what we're gonna do in order to prep for our next coat of polyurethane. We are going to shoot for this particular piece. Earlier in the video, I had said 2 coats of polyurethane. We do want 2 coats, but since we've thinned this down, since we've cut it at 50%, this would count as a half of a coat. So 2 coats of wiping on poly would only count for 1 coat. So we really want a minimum of 3 of these wipe on polys. More than likely, you're probably going to shoot for 4. It looks really nice after 4. I wanted to explain one more thing, because I didn't touch base with it earlier in the video. I told you how we cut this polyurethane 50-50. I believe I told you the reason why we cut it was so that it makes it more or less viscous and more runny. So in other words, it wipes on more close to like a water. So it's nice and thin, all right, and it wipes on good. The other reason, all right, why we do that is we can wipe it on, and since it's 50% paint thinner, maybe some of you guys have noticed this. Maybe if you're filling up the lawnmower and you dump some gas on the driveway, all of a sudden you kind of see that puddle shrink down. What's happening is that gas is evaporating. Same thing if you get a cut on your hand and you use some rubbing alcohol. The reason why it's chilly is because it's evaporating super fast. Rubbing alcohol evaporates super fast, which causes that cooling. It's the same thing with that paint thinner. That paint thinner evaporates pretty fast. So what happens is the paint thinner evaporates out of the polyurethane, leaving behind that 50% coat of the actual poly, which is why it takes twice as many coats of wipe on as it does if we were brushing on. It'll make more sense as we go ahead and we start adding coats to this. It doesn't look like much right now, but I promise you by the time we're done with this, it's gonna look fantastic. Next time we cut in the video, we're gonna show you how to get that done. All right, guys, it's the following day, and our polyurethane's dried pretty nice on this block. If we look at it, it's got a little bit of a shine to it. It's definitely more shiny than it was with no polyurethane on it. So today, we're gonna have to go ahead and put our next coat of polyurethane on. And earlier in the video, we had talked about how we probably want to put on 2 actual coats of polyurethane, but since it's cut at 50%, 4 is really where we want to be. 3 is kind of like the minimum, but 4 would be good. Anyhow, what we want to do is, before we put on our next coat of polyurethane, when I rub my hand over this, it kind of feels like it has a little bit of grit or sandy, papery type feeling to it. And that's because the dust yesterday, it kind of dried in here, and it's just a sawdust stuck in the dried polyurethane. So what we're going to do today is we're going to use some steel wool, and this happens to be 4/0 steel wool, which is the 4 zeros, which is the finest steel wool that you can use. I would recommend using any of the 0 number steel wools. 4/0's just a little bit easier on the projects. Might need a little bit more work, but kids oftentimes do a little bit excessive amounts of steel wooling, so that's why we opt to use the 4/0. Anyways, the purpose of this steel wool, and if you take note, I'm just carefully going over it a little bit. Feel that? Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll go over the edges first, like this, and then just go back and forth. If I feel that it feels good and smooth right now, over these edges I don't need much. The purpose of this right here is it's taking off that sandpapery-ish feeling. So it's taking off, it's kind of leveling off that layer of polyurethane that has some of that dust and debris stuck in it. And what it also is doing is it's putting some scratches in our in our piece of, in our finish. There's some scratches in our polyurethane. We can't see them, but those scratches will act as like a nice adhesion layer. So the polyurethane gets down in there and it has scratches to dig into, and it really helps it bond really nice. So this right here, I feel it feels fantastic. All I'm gonna do is put my gloves back on and my safety glasses back on, and we're gonna put another layer right on this here. Oops. And I accidentally put it on the top side here first. It's all right, I'll rub it in real fast. Go over to the other side. And remember that a little bit goes a long way. Earlier in the video we talked about how less is more. And it's just one of those things you have to build up layers in order to make it really look good and feel good. Multiple light layers is much more valuable than, you know, one or two really thick layers. It takes forever to dry, gets a lot of debris stuck in it. It just is, it's not really an appealing finish when you put it on thick. It goes back to those instant results. And it's not just a kid thing. You know, sometimes I get a little bit carried away when I'm putting on, you know, polyurethane, because I'm like, maybe I just need a little bit more. But in reality, you don't. When in doubt, it's just best to walk away, because guess what? Tomorrow we can put more on, and the next day we can put more on, and it just takes time. Now, this is our second coat of wipe-on poly. If we take a look at it, it's starting to build up a little bit of a shine. I think it's going to be in great shape. We would repeat this process in between every coat of polyurethane. Now, this is coat number 2. Tomorrow would be coat number 3. The following day we would do coat number 4. And after coat number 4, we're going to apply something called paste wax, and we're not going to steel wool it after that 4th coat. We kind of are, but we're not. So when we're polyurethaning, all right, we put the poly on light, we let it dry overnight, we hit it with a nice little bit of steel wool, not too much, put another coat of poly on, let it dry overnight, repeat that process, steel wool poly. Could you put on more than 4 coats of polyurethane wipe on? Absolutely. You could put on as many as you want, but after a certain point in time, you're just kind of overkilling it. This, in a nutshell, is what I wanted you guys to see. The biggest thing is just don't overdo it, all right? Don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes that's the best thing, just leave it, you know? A minute's worth of polyurethane is probably more than enough for something this small here. Hope you guys got the general gist of it. Talking to you guys soon.